Hi, today I'd like to talk about a 1903 book written under the pen name Morien, and it's called A History of Pontypridd and the Rhondda Valleys. The Morien is Owen Morgan. And he's done a delightful book about Pontypridd and the Rhondda, which includes countless histories of the people, the building and creation of the town of Pontypridd, including the old bridge, the background to the social life that went on there, including the Druids and the ceremonies up on the rocking stone. He's got details of a variety of monuments, such as Ynysycrug mound up in the Tonypandy area, and great detail of the various British battles with the Romans. So let's take a look at a photograph of Morien. Here he is, and he signed off in 1899, yours sincerely, Morien. I think he was a journalist in South Wales. Today I'd like to talk about the mound known as Ynysycrug. It's located near Tonypandy and Treallow. And Morien says it was about 100 feet high. Now take a look at that sketch, which is pre-1855, and look at those Druids celebrating in the top of the hill. They're having a great time, aren't they? So let's take a look in the book then and read what Morien has to say, specifically about the lordship of Rhondda, which incorporates Ynysycrug. The lordship of Rhondda, its ancient court leat, a sacred mound. To this day, as already stated, the official or manorial centre of the lordship of Rhondda is at a place called Ynysycrug, or Field of the Mound. That mound is now but a small poor fragment of what it was down to about the year 1855, when the Taff Vale Railway constructed the Rhondda branch to Treherbert from Dinas, to which it had been brought many years before. In cutting its course up the valley, the ancient sacred mound was sliced away, and less than 1/6 of its original dimensions was left to remain. No one seemed to have had the slightest notion that, like the Tonypandy, corruptly called Tynwald in the Isle of Man, which is exactly similar to this one, this was the ancient court of the manor of the lordship of Rhondda, where, during many centuries, the authorities from far and near, down through feudal times, came to transact civil business relating to the manor. And during many centuries prior to the time of the introduction of the feudal system of land tenure by Druids. Place names here indicate that formerly the criminal law was administered here. It is certain all these sacred mounds were reared in this country unknown ages prior to the introduction of Christianity into Britain, when Druidism was the established religion of the Isle of Britain in all its sections. In purely Cymric and Britannic ancient times, Each of these mounds was the centre around which revolved all religious and civil government relating to the division of the country to which each pertained. Therefore, we are entitled to regard this crug and its environments as having been hallowed by the feet of the great ones of ancient days, who were wont to assemble here in their thousands, to worship according to the light given to them, the author of their being and sustainer of their lives. Their sermons were preached from the summit of the crug, or Tŷ Gwyn, for the mound went under many names, to the assembled congregation round about the outer rim of the trench of water encircling the sacred hillock of the early world. Their hymns, long forgotten ones, which were more ancient than those of Orpheus, were sung here, and the hills around echoed back the sonorous music of voice and many harps in the hands of the minstrel bards, who sang of the fortunate isles and regions where souls went and enjoyed eternal summer bloom, with fruitful orchards of Taliesin, Hugh, Gadan, and Owen. In their fancy they soared reverently to the mysterious and incomprehensible Caelw, who is the Coelus of the Greeks, and to Cariadwen, the Queen of Heaven, the mother of the Sun's physical body, and whose father is Hugh Gadan, the native name of the Christos of Greek philosophy, but whose Hebrew names are Messiah and Elohim. The top of the mound was called Penabith, or top of the world. Each of these mounds was a symbol of the earth, then believed to be circular and flat-bottomed. So much is stated to convey some idea as to the reason why, in the eyes of the antiquarian, the mound is a most sacred one. It is stated that when the railway men dug into this mound, it was found to be swarming with serpents. This may have been due to its altitude above the surrounding field, and its dry condition and the convenience of the adjacent river, and, further, its facing south, and that, therefore, the noonday sun always shone upon it. But there is still another possibility, namely, serpents being limbless were the Druids' symbols of disembodied spirits. Another favourite symbol of spirits, both in Egypt and Britain, were wings and feathers. We learn that most serpents in Britain are non-venomous, and that therefore the Druids, knowing their harmless nature, kept them as pets to be exhibited, to illustrate sermons on great occasions around the sacred mound. We know that in those lakes of Wales, and anciently the scenes of aquatic religious ceremonies, the white water lilies brought into them from abroad for religious rites are still in those lakes, having yearly, ever since, propagated themselves. In the Golden Valley of Stroud, Gloucestershire, there is an abundance of the Italian snails, which were, with the Romans, dainty articles of diet, and the French know. They are found in the ruins of walls of 3 villas, which belonged to the ancient Romans. In the same way, the serpents found in this mound were possibly the descendants of the same serpent pets of the Druids. Was it not as a serpent the Word appeared to Moses in Midian? And is it not the brazen serpent on a cross said to be the antitype of Jesus Christ, crucified? In classic writings, the Druids are called both serpents and demigods. In our boyhood, the great mound of Ynysycrug was perfect. Great oaks covered it like a canopy of the gods, and the branches interlaced each other. Beneath them and in their shades grew bluebells in abundance, and the grass there was lawn-like for its fineness. The court leat has been long transferred to the adjacent Pandy Inn, one of the oldest, indeed it can be safely stated, the oldest hostelry in the Valley district. Near it are the parish pond, the old place of punishment, viz. Mug and Cloyn Beyer. Excuse my Welsh. Both names signifying place of punishment. We'll see that later. Rhydd or sacred ford. I'll say that again. Rhydd or sacred ford. About 100 yards lower in the valley than the mound is a spot on the Rhondda River called Rhydd. Du is obviously a corruption of do. DEW is obviously a corruption of DUW. DUW, the most familiar name of God in Welsh. The spot is a short distance above the present stone bridge across the river. Until the present bridge was erected, the old ford was approached over a road directly opposite the Dunraven Hotel on the western side of the river, and it was too the old parish road to the eastern side of the valley. Taking all the sacred place names here and the mound into consideration, it appears exceedingly probable that Rhydd was the Via Sacra, or Sacred Way, leading over the river from the old priestly town on the western slopes of the valley in the mound of Ynysycrug on the eastern side of it. How interesting is that? So let's take a look where we are on the map then. And here we have the location under the blue dot near Treallow at the bottom of Tonypandy, next to the river, and it's called Ynysycrug Castle, Hangman's Hill, Gibbet Hill. So that ties in with what Morien said about the punishment place names. Ynysycrug Castle comes from the false idea that the Normans built it as a Motte and Bailey castle. Pretty much an idea that is discounted. Here it is on a 1840 map. Right in the centre of the picture, Ynysycrug, and you can see the mound to the left of it, right by the river. And look at all that wonderful countryside. Hills covered in trees, beautiful. So what does it look like now? That's all that remains. Nice picture there from Sylvia Edwards. Here's Sylvia's photographs, and this is quite an old one. You see the age of the car in the picture, and that was the mound before the modern bypass was built. So sadly Morien's 100-foot mound, reduced to 1/6 of its size by the building of the railway, has now been even further reduced by the bypass. And here we have the rear view image from the age of the previous one, when before the bypass was built, when there was a little bit more, the 1/6 of the hillock left after the railway demolition. There's the site from the railway before the bypass. Another old photograph provided by Sylvia Edwards. Thank you, Sylvia. Morien mentioned the Tynwald on the Isle of Man. So the Tynwald is an annual parliament. But we heard from Morien how Tynwald, from ancient British, is a corruption of Ynys Y Crug. But it's a meeting place now on the Isle of Man, and the Parliament meets there once a year. And so that is an exact example of what Morien was describing as took place in Rhondda annually, or maybe more often whenever courts were needed. So this was a gathering place of worship by the Druids. And here's the old Tynwald on the Isle of Man. They've clearly moved to the new venue for convenience. I'm sure there's better images on the Isle of Man of the mound that would have been 100 foot. The location of Ynysycrug is right by the sign for Collier's Way when you come down off the upper bypass above Tonypandy, dropping down from Clydach roundabout to the bottom of the valley floor, and when you take a left there, that's Collier's Way, and Ynysycrug is right by there, and you can park just off the roundabout on the left hand side at the bottom of the hill. Let's take a look at the videos I took on my recent visit. That's pretty much all that's left, the high point of it. And of course right next to it, more building work. Here are the photographs that match the video. So this is a couple of photographs showing a craggy hill. Now the hill there is lit up beautifully by the setting sun on a autumnal evening or a spring morning evening. The sun catches it and turns it red. So that's taken from the council offices. And one meaning of Ynysycrug is that it's the island of the crag. Well, there are crags, as you can see, fairly close by. And there it is, that's all that's left of a 100-foot mound, and it's right by the sign for Collier's Way, just off the roundabout. I wonder what it would look like without the bracken. Still unimpressive, no doubt. And there's the railway line that took away 5/6 of the height. And that's all that's left, and you can see the bypass in the foreground took away the bulk of the remaining 1/6. Very much from the back now, nothing to see from the back either. So this is down the private road. You can't take your car down there, but you can slip under the gate as long as you don't cause any problems. And I wonder what the original builders of the mound would have thought to see the ruin of it covered in Himalayan balsam. Quite pretty flowers, but one species, no biodiversity where Himalayan balsam grows. And that little bit of bracken above the pretty flowers, that's all that's left of the mound. Maybe that's what the mound might have looked like. That's the top of a proper hill covered in woodland. Imagine it sitting in the base of the valley next to the river. And there's the valley down there. So that mound would originally have stood in the middle of that picture, behind those folds of those hills. Typical scenery of the area, plenty of mountains. You would hardly think the Normans had a fort amongst all those mountains. They could easily have been cut off, stabbed in the back. No, I don't think for one second that the Normans created a Motte and Bailey fort in that area. Hope you enjoyed the presentation. Ynysycrug. So the next time you're on the bypass heading into Tonypandy towards the Asda shop and the miners' statue, bear a thought for the history that we've lost. And in point of fact, the great big building on the left at the roundabout ahead of you by the traffic lights, that has tremendous modern history as well, doesn't it, from 100 years ago, which should be preserved. Scene of the Tonypandy riots. Thank you very much.